First, General MacArthur, so many challenges that you encountered through your long and distinguished career, stretching through three major wars, World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. What would you say was your greatest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
I would say that my greatest challenge was during peacetime. It was not with combat. It would be with the Great Depression from my office of my tenure as Chief of Staff of the Army from 1930 to 1935. Don't mean to disappoint you. America was in the Great Depression, and both President Hoover and later President Roosevelt wanted to slash our budgets for the defense to a dangerously low level. And being a military man, and military men and women do have the ability to project ahead, perhaps more so than some politicians, that we would be in a dangerously low position in the world. In 1932, for example, the United States ranked 17th in the world in size of army. On paper, we could have put up a good fight against Albania, but we might have been very badly mauled. And that situation hadn't changed by 1939 when one of my successors, George Marshall, became Chief of Staff of the Army. I just want to relate a story about one of my encounters with President Roosevelt. President Roosevelt had taken office in 1933, and we had known each other for several years going back to the First War, when he was the Assistant Secretary of the Navy and I was Superintendent of what is now the Executive Office Building, the old Army, State, and War Departments across the street from the White House. When President Roosevelt in 1934 budget proposed that the U.S. Army be cut by 20% with a reduction in our officer corps from 12,000 officers, that's all we had in 1934, to 10,000 officers, the Secretary of War, George Dern, became alarmed, informed me, and we made an appointment to see the president. Secretary Dern made the case, and President Roosevelt was not interested in hearing that, and it at one point became irate, and Secretary Dern grew white under the lashing from President Roosevelt. Well, I felt that I needed to take up the cudgels, and I told the president that if he went ahead with these budget cuts, he would severely limit our ability to defend ourselves, and I was quite blunt with him. The president did not want to hear that. And he could be quite a scorcher when he was aroused, and he was quite upset with me. And I'm sorry to say that I lost my temper, and I remarked something to the effect that when the next war came, and there was an American boy lying in the mud with an enemy boot on his throat and an enemy bayonet in his gut, the name that he would spit out would be Roosevelt and not MacArthur. The moment those words left my lip, I knew I was wrong. The president said, "How dare you speak to me like that?" I apologized, I resigned, and as I left, he said, "Douglas, we must get together on this. We'll work this out," and we eventually did. But as we left, all I could do was vomit all over the steps of the White House. Now, military men traditionally deal in battles, but in peacetime, we have challenges too. And another aspect of my career is when I was superintendent of West Point, and I was preparing American Army officers for the next war, which we knew was coming. I was superintendent there from 1919 to 1922. I'd only graduated from West Point 16 years before, but the Chief of Staff of the Army at that time felt I was the right fit. And I attempted to reform the curriculum by adding humanities to the curriculum with more emphasis on English and history, as I felt that as future occupiers, we needed to be more what I think we would call nowadays multicultural. We needed to understand other cultures if we were going to conquer them and then attempt to reform them. I also revamped the athletic program, introducing new sports to the academy, and as well as liberalizing the cadets' life by giving them more responsibility. Because of these actions, my tour was cut short by 1 year, and I was sent to the Philippines. Though I'm happy to say that although my reforms were immediately removed by my successor, By the 1930s, they came back into power. And it was those type of things which I think helped us prepare for the next war. Most Army officers knew in 1919 with the Treaty of Versailles, which ended the war in Europe, that it was essentially an armistice and there would be another war. And we knew that the power of Japan in the Pacific was growing. And so the Army had to spend its time in peacetime preparing for war. So I think those were my greatest challenges.
Thank you, General. Fascinating stories. President Quezon, the Philippines really endured a crucible of suffering from 1941 till 1945, all the way to the end. Recently, there's been work demonstrating the terrible brutality that the Japanese inflicted on the people of Manila as they left at the end of World War II. And yet throughout it all, the Filipino people demonstrated tremendous resilience, tremendous courage, and a tremendous ability to continue the fight for their people, and they proved to me to be wonderful allies for the United States. How do you account for the ability of your people to show such tremendous bravery and such tremendous resilience under the most terrible conditions throughout the war?
Thank you for that question. One of the greatest moments of me being the president of the Philippines during the U.S. Commonwealth government was being able to have a stronger relationship and getting to know, the Americans, because that's the first time that we've been exposed to the Americans under the U.S. government. And actually, General Douglas MacArthur here is one of my buddies when he was assigned in the Philippines, together with Lieutenant Dwight Eisenhower. We were like poker buddies during that time. And
Eisenhower, not me.
yeah. Eisenhower mainly. He comes once in a while, just to watch us and join us socially. And what many people don't understand is the culture of the Filipinos. Great question that you have. What's inside the Filipinos' heart that gave them that drive, that fervor, that's burning desire? It's actually the love of freedom of these people. Through the history, if you go back to the history of the Philippines, from the time that they fought against the invasion of Spain, when the Spain landed in the island of Leyte in the Philippines, and here comes the Southerners trying to fight these invaders to go to the Philippines, but the Filipinos have lost, and Spain have stayed in the Philippines for almost 400 years, from 1521 to 1898. So that was a long time. That's why even my name, Quezon is a Spanish name. So you could see the influence that we have in the country. So they have that special heart. I think it's the multicultural influence of how the Filipinos came up to be. Even our language is what they call an Indo-Malaysian kind of formation of language that we have. If you will hear Malaysians speak, they sound sometimes like a Filipino, but the meaning of the words that they have that sounds exactly like a Filipino word is not the same meaning. And same with the Indonesians. So, and because of that, and I think another important factor into that I would contribute to that is the influence of the Christian foundation, just like the way the Constitution of the United States has been established, to a strong Christian-based faith. And because of that unique combination between their Christian, values and their love for their family and their country, they had a little bit of a challenge because, see, the country is made out of over 7,000 islands. So they started to become regionalistic, meaning one does not speak the dialect of another island. So it's kind of a challenging thing. But when the war, came in, all of a sudden the Filipinos started working together. just like what happened in 9/11, we all have witnessed that, where all of a sudden Americans, from all different race, colors, and ethnicities started working together, helping each other out to overcome, the invaders on this country. And so that's the uniqueness of Philippines. I would put it into one word. The Filipino have a heart of compassion. If you look at the healthcare of today, see, my background is I'm a physician, and in the healthcare of today, I would take pride of telling you that if you're taken care by a Filipino doctor, a Filipino nurse, or a Filipino physical therapist, one thing I could guarantee you that they will have an edge because of that special heart of compassion. They will go out of their way to make it sure that they take care of you, even though there's not enough money to pay that kind of service that they have. So that's one thing that I would say of the difference that we have and our edge that we have with regard to being able to contribute something on the table for the world to see.
Thank you, sir. That was a wonderful answer. I'm sorry that we didn't have time for a fuller conversation. I don't know if the audience has any questions, but I appreciate your attending this event today in our conversation.
So thank you, everybody, the people who survived to the end, and hope you had a great time, and look forward to staying in touch and seeing you again.
Thank you very much for serving this country.